ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between.
He's a South Texan poppy poet living that hashtag middle-class gay life. It's Chibi.
She's a little bit Selena, a little bit J-Lo, and a whole lot of Pisces. It's Rocky.
And this is Words and Shit,
the show where you get to know the person behind the poetry.
Brought to you by Write Art Out
and Gemini's Productions.
Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
How are you doing?
We getting through it. We finding moments of joy in our life. We trucking along.
I know. I'm trucking along, but you know what's getting me going and getting me through life are my friends. Yes, I definitely hear that song from the Beatles is like, I get a little by with the help from my friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know that song? Yes.
I know. I mean, we're friends. This moment's getting me through life.
It really is. And it's just been so amazing just kind of talk about poetry with you. Because it doesn't feel like I'm talking with like a co-host. It really is just talking with friends.
Yes.
And go ahead.
What's something you did recently with your friends that, got you through?
Rock climbing.
So random.
So random for me, Brad.
So random, so different from the activities of our youth.
Really. And it's something that I really have no interest in like doing, but my friends are like, hey, let's go rock climbing with like a BIPOC collective. And we go to Harlem, Queens, and Brooklyn and Gowanus to go rock climbing with just like all these people while they're playing like Bad Bunny and reggaeton, which is like really, really gets me going.
Spoke to your heart.
Yes. And also doing like hood rat shit too with my friends. Like we'll rock climb, but we're like, I'm a little tipsy and then we get a little bit more tipsy and then I go home and just like, I'm a hot Cheeto girl deep down in my heart. Like I will always love to have my fingers red with the hot Cheetos, but since my cousin's been doing my nails, I can't. I got to be a little careful. So I wear gloves.
Wow, you're serious.
Yeah,
you are serious.
I have my little gloves.
An addiction, Raquel, right?
Is it an addiction?
If somebody tells you you can't, eat hot Cheetos because it's going to ruin your acrylics, you're like, well, instead of not eating hot Cheetos, I'll just wear gloves. That's addictive behavior. Trust me, I know.
All right, Fred, how about you? Do you do any like hood rat shit things with your friends, or how do you get by?
I don't know. We turn up at our weekly poetry open mics. I love that like the poetry open mic is like the littest thing in town for us. Yeah. As lit as I get. But it was funny the other week we were sitting there and it was coincidentally enough, it was me, Rooster, and our friend Travis. And all of us are like have been in the poetry world for 10 plus years, right? We're just sitting in the back of the venue, just drinking and like looking around at all these like new poets, and it's like, oh my God, have we become the OGs? Are we like that group of old poets that just sit in the back of the room? Like, are my gray hairs giving me away? Just so different from how it was 10 plus years ago, where like we'd be turning out after the poetry is over. It's like, all right, whose house are we going to? Is somebody going to stop and get a bucket of fried chicken or a pizza or something? Little Caesars is showing up, and we taking this till like 4 a.m. And now it's like, well, I guess it's close to midnight. Time to go home. But yes, the hood rat shit of our youth was real.
It was real, and I feel like, at least for my back and my knees, are feeling it.
You talk about like doing hood rat shit while rock climbing when You had 3 margaritas, friend.
I did. I had 3 margaritas, spicy margaritas, and I was like, I can conquer the world. Let me go rock climbing without ropes, by the way. So I was climbing walls with my little manicured hands. Hopefully, my cousin doesn't hear this, but they kind of survived.
Well, I kind of already. I mean, if someone's watching this, they know who our guest is. But I kind of mentioned him already. On today's show, we had one of our best friends, honestly, truly. And I know we've both gotten into hood rat shit with him. And we had a great time talking about his current collection, what it represents, and this chronicling of, what has transpired in his life. And it's a beautiful collection to get to. And I can't wait to share the conversation that we had with him.
Yes. So we have Christopher L. Rooster Martinez, is an educator and writer and spoken word poet from San Antonio, Texas. He is the author of 2 poetry books, A Saint for Lost Things and As It Is in Heaven, as well as an upcoming kids book, Puro Galaxy Defender, and his latest poetry collection, Mexican Dinosaur. His work has appeared in such publications as Huizache, Voices de la Luna, right about now poetry, button poetry, the Huffington Post Latino Voices, Acentos Review, and others. He was co-editor of Contra, Texas Poets Speak Out, a poetry anthology, and was a writer on the 2016 play American Pride. Rooster earned an MA, MFA in creative writing, literature, and social justice from Our Lady of the Lake University, and teaches English at Palo Alto College in San Antonio. Here is our conversation with our good friend, Christopher L. Rooster Martinez.
Rooster, welcome to Words and Shit.
Hello. Hi. Thank you all so much to be in Rocky. I'm very happy to be here.
Hi, I know it's been a while. If y'all don't know, the trio.
No, I was on the season finale of the last one.
I know,
so I'm happy that y'all are back.
Yes, we're excited, and I'm so happy to be back and just talking to some dope poets, and you're a dope poet yourself and one of our really closest friends. So I'm really, really excited to get into your new work.
For some reason, I completely glossed over the fact that you were on the season finale and was thinking back because, for people that may be new listeners, Rooster is actually the first guest on Words and Shit. When we started this back in April of 2020, it was so different back then. We had just started a podcast. COVID cases were on the rise. Rooster was releasing a book. And now we just started a podcast. COVID on the rise. So this feels very apropos.
Yeah, it was really supposed to just be for 2-3 months to get us through COVID. And season 4, here you are. Hey.
Hey.
That's awesome.
I know we're going to go straight into it. Okay. You know the deal. You've been on this before, and I hope you're ready for me to ask you, how's your heart?
Oh, yeah, that's right. My heart is very eager. I have a very eager heart right now. The semester is beginning for me next week. And usually the week prior to a semester starting, I get very, I get that last bit of rest in. I use it to prepare for the upcoming semester. And for some reason, this year, I decided, no, I'm going to pack a bunch of things in there. So yesterday, I was very fortunate enough to do a convocation in Lee College. Or not, a performance and whole English department conversation and presentation. I have a podcast with Chibi that we're doing with Cultura 2.0 on Sunday. I'm doing Collective Care Fest on Saturday at Brick, so that's going to be awesome. And then Monday I have class. So on top of all that, I have a book coming out later in the fall. So things are just excited. Things are happening, and I'm very happy. I'm eager and looking forward to the future.
I love it. And for the listeners, probably by the time this episode drops, your book will have already come out. So, if you're listening now, you can go get Rooster's book at wanpoetry.com/Rooster.
That's right.
So then let's dive into it. You know the drill. We start off the show with a little segment we call speed dating. We're going to ask you 4 questions, and we encourage you to answer as concisely as possible.
Sure.
Speaking of the semester starting, first question is, what is your favorite thing to teach, whether it be a topic, a class, a poem, a thing, or favorite like teaching moment?
I would say I really love teaching composition 2, which is when it's basically an intro to literature class. And I love teaching it because it gives me an opportunity to teach poetry and not be a creative writing class. So the majority of the students who I have probably don't even like poetry. And I get to introduce them to some amazing poets that they never heard of. I show them poems by Chibi. It's a much more diverse canon, much more contemporary, living poets that they can find on Instagram. And it really gets them sort of excited for once to kind of be like, oh my God, like they're talking about places that I've been at or lived in and seen, or streets I've walked down. And so it kind of makes it fresh for them. And it sort of reminds them like, hey, yeah, like art is supposed to be fun and not just old and dusty.
Love it. Love it. Because it is. It's a living thing, right? And it's not for dead old white men. So,
no, not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Ready for my question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So serious. Dead ass serious. Let's go. Which basketball player do you think could have been a dope hip hop artist?
Oh, that's easy. Allen Iverson. Yeah, Allen Iverson had some albums. Kobe Bryant had a rap album that was really bad. Oh, wait, no, I take that back. Damian Lillard from the Portland Trail Blazers, because he can rap his ass off. Like he could probably make it as a rapper if he wanted to. But yeah, Allen Iverson had an album. Shaq had an album, and it wasn't. And then there's a lot of others that are just sometimes funny to check in on. So that's a really good question. But yeah, Damian Lillard, Portland Trail Blazers.
I learned something new today.
Yeah,
I didn't know that there was the basketball to hip hop crossover happening.
Oh yeah, it's intense.
All right,
and it's mostly all terrible. Like mostly it's bad.
I believe it. My next question, you know this one's coming. I've asked it before, but maybe the answer's changed. What is your favorite thing to eat? What's your favorite dish?
My favorite dish. My favorite dish right now. This is a stereotypical answer, but I don't care. And maybe it's just because I'm like been like really conservative about my money lately. I'm just like, I need to like stop going out, stop ordering Uber Eats all the time. So the local neighborhood taqueria is my jam. Like just all the different like options. I'm just living for it. Shout out to Rosita's on the west side. Yeah, that's my shit.
I was in the south side yesterday and stopped at a food truck because duh.
Yeah. And you're funny because like I saw you post that and I was like, and it was like, oh, I'm in the west side, gotta get a taco. And I was like, oh yeah, like where's Chibi at? Like maybe I'll pop in. And then I remember that the west side is huge and you were like way on the other. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna run into him.
On the south side, I think I misquoted. I was on like military. So.
Yeah, it's a long street.
All right, keeping it super sonanto. Rooster, give me a little bit of magic. Give me a little bit of home because I miss it. I'm wearing my Selena. Let's go all out. Tell me, which part of Sonanto is the definition of puro for you?
Ooh, snap. That's hard. There's a number of places. You know what? Maybe it's not so hard. I'm going to say Brass Monkey. This is a very San Antonio deep cut for the listeners. So many people have no idea what I'm referencing, but I'm judging by the laughter that I might have hit a bullseye. Yeah, and for should I explain what that is to people? Or
yes.
A little bit, concisely.
So there's a famous, infamous, however you want to look at it, club strip called the North St. Mary Strip in San Antonio. It's where you can bar hop. They have all types of dive bars, but it's a very, very fun place to be. There's all types of things and shenanigans you can get into. And then we lovingly call the people who frequent those places, such as us, because that's where we also do our weekly poetry reading. We lovingly call ourselves strip rats. And the strip rat of Strip Rat Place is Brass Monkey, where every, I think it's second and fourth Wednesday of the month, they'll have a line that just stretches and stretches. And it's for emo night, one. And then two, it's because they're giving away a free t-shirt, and San Antonians will always come out for free shit. And they might not even go into the club, but they're there for the free shirt. And then there's, I don't want to say a lot of illegal stuff that might get them, indicted, but it's a really good place. We'll just say that. Or it's a place that you either want to be at or not. I'll say it like that.
That's so funny. And I think you did nail it, because even when I'm inviting people to our poetry night, they're like, I don't know where Hondros is. And I'm like, it's across the street from Brass Monkey. And everybody knows. Everybody knows where Brass Monkey is, even if they don't.
Right across the street. Love it.
Love it. Well,
that's me. That's me. I'm so sorry. Well, with that concluded, let's dive into it. Give us a poem and let's go.
Okay. I'm going to read some poetry from my latest book that's coming out through Right About Now Press publications. This poem is called The Fourth Generation. It begins with an epigraph from the poetry San Antonio rock star, mujer Amalia Ortiz. And she has a quote that says, "They say the first generation sacrifices so the second generation can achieve, only for the third generation to squander, and these third generation hands have never picked cotton." And the fourth generation is left to figure out the future. We couldn't build the hearth at the burning heart of the house, but we could set up Alexa to run the whole house. We didn't work 80-hour weeks to send the children to school in white, clean clothes, to keep a roof afloat in a sea of economic insecurity, to keep the beans boiling over the blue flame of the stove. But we work 80-hour weeks to send ourselves to school, to keep the apartment afloat in a sea of economic insecurity, to keep the ramen noodles with sriracha at the ready for hungry bellies of friends and girlfriends, lost families, and strangers. We didn't pick cotton, but we wore cotton. We wore the polished shoes. We saw our grandparents and loved them, saw our great-grandparents and missed them, saw our parents, saw the cul-de-sac snap in half, the children boomerang back from the adult world at a loss of self, at a loss for words, at a loss for purpose. We had hands ready to bleed and work, and we were given the internet. We had hands ready for revolution and were handed a debt. We have hands. We have these hands. We have hands. We were given a holy world that was treated as if it were disposable and then chided for not treating anything sacred. We were handed flaccid magic and expired spells, then blasted when the alchemy wouldn't take root. We carried broken child souls to then be asked what motivates us most in college entrance exams. We saw a lonely sun and sad moon return home every day at 5 p.m. like all the life and love around us was thrown down from the moon's height, yet we still hope against fireflies that the world doesn't burn away before our hands can build something. Thank you.
First of all, I feel like I've been a fan of your poetry for 15 years now, right? It's been, or maybe 10 years. I want to say 10 years.
Okay.
For such a long, maybe longer. But the most things that I really love about your work is that you always bring in this intergenerational narrative and storytelling, right? And I think what's so unique about a Southwest Texas, Mexican American storytelling is that you're seeing fourth, fifth generation, right? That are kind of being separate, but still on a land that was really the motherland. Can you explain like how is that different from like immigrant narratives, and why is it still so important for even fifth, sixth generations to have these stories? And yeah.
I think that's a great question. I think especially now that because there's a growing and large Latino, Latinx, Latine media presence that's happening through like Instagram and TikTok videos and influencers, we're actually having these conversations like online. We're not really having them maybe as much as I'd like to see in like academic spaces and definitely not in pop culture. But I think that's why I feel like my art kind of has a responsibility to do that. Because it is different. And while we talk about like No Sabo kids or, first gen, children of immigrants, and how their narratives are always tied to borders and border crossings and sort of pulling themselves up from their bootstraps and those type of narratives that are very important as well. Sometimes it's just different to sort of say, well, I come from the same culture, but our colonialization kind of happened earlier and in many ways is tied to the American experience and tied to American pop culture and tied to, a lot of the same racist and xenophobic pressures that immigrants still face, but happen a lot earlier through whether it be through like the horrible atrocities committed by the Texas Rangers on Mexican American and indigenous populations, to like the city of San Antonio being a very predominantly Mexican city that it took many years before we ever had like Mexican representation in like the mayor or on city council boards. And there's still a lot of segregation that exists there and power dynamics in that. So I think that's where that kind of formation of perspective comes from.
Yeah, I think your work has always been, while very personal, also very deeply political, because of that idea of colonialization and the need and desire to decolonize the space. And I think one of the tools that you implore a lot that really successfully is your use of magical realism, and how in which you just create something because of the need that it doesn't exist, right? And just let it kind of like run free. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like why you lean into that and how it flows through your work?
I'll give two kind of answers to that. On one hand, I do think a lot of the magic does exist, like in my own life and just sort of my family's life, and local barrio curanderas and ghost stories and mythological stories, and then just neighborhood stories of like, almost like tall tales. You kind of come to just believe the magic, and you see the magic and you see how it kind of exists. So that's kind of really like the world I live in, like all the time. When you just see things that are just markedly bizarre under normal circumstances happening around you, but then also happening with like joy, or with happening like tragically to tragic results, or whatever the case may be. So like I kind of always inform my worldview like that, where it's like, no, like this kind of like synchronicity magic that sometimes we see, where it's like, oh, the universe is talking to me, or is it synchronicity? Like whatever it is, it's still powerful and it's still magic. So I kind of always kind of lean into it like that. And then secondly, I think I write that way because it's a way of sort of blending the magical realism of like a Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who I think is a profound poet in his own right, even though he predominantly wrote in fiction. I think I really like those qualities in the work, to where you make living surreal, because oftentimes it does feel surreal, and sometimes our emotions are complicated to really get a hold on, and it just feels like there's some sort of duende pulling you down. So why not just point at it and call it a duende?
Love it. Okay, I want to kind of like shift a little bit, still in the realm of like magical realism or just reinvention of this narrative of being a Mexican American in Southwest Texas. I want to go towards, and this is what I've been kind of wondering, your title of your new collection, Mexican Dinosaur. Why? Why Mexican Dinosaur? I have some thoughts of it. I think.
Well, can you tell me your thoughts first?
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
Yeah, no, because I think that I've been, so quick note. Chibi hated the title of this book. He hated it, and that's fine. Like I totally get it. But I felt it in my bones. I was like, no, this has to be the title. And like the response has been awesome. I've been getting a lot of people like Mexican Dinosaur. That's cool, man. I like that. Da, da, da. I'm just interested what your takeaway from it was, or why you thought it was interesting.
Okay, so there's like two parts. Knowing you.
No, you mute yourself. No, mute. You were wrong.
I did hate the title at first, but it is very on brand for you.
Yes. Yes, I think it's definitely very on brand for you because it's so much play. Because when I think about Mexican Dinosaur, I don't think of like an actual big, large dinosaur. I think like a cute toy Mexican dinosaur with like a little door, like a mask. That's how I feel it, and I think that's how you kind of navigate this world of like it's playful but you're going to be having so much fun, and your words and everything you do is always with fun. But then like the academic side of me is that, again, we're going back to like this gatekeeping of like immigrant narratives, right? And then we don't really highlight the 5th or 6th generation because it's just like, oh, you're already part of this United States culture. Is like, well, no, not really, right? And so I think it's like Mexican Dinosaur also highlights the Mexican-centric narratives that we're so familiar with, and saying that it's extinct, but at the same time, like the fossils and like the bones that we keep finding, and like, and I guess, yeah, we dig up, there's so much more death, and there's like their bones and everything is scattered all over the place, right? So your people are just scattered just for us to be uncovered because there's so much more death when you kind of look into it. And I think that is what your collection is about. It's the multitudes of layers of your mom, of you, of your friends, of your grandparents, and like your ancestors and your ghosts that you haven't even met yet. And you're just telling all these stories and all these different layers that we have to uncover ourselves as like geeky poetry.
Yeah. No, I love it.
This is how you know that Raquel has an MFA in poetry and is the one.
Oh yeah. Absolutely, yeah, that was legit. That was so legit. You're on point, especially with like the academic side of it. But I'll kind of I'll answer the question. So there's a poem in the book called Mexican Dinosaur, and this is a true story. I remember, I think I was in like 6th or 7th grade, and in history books, when they teach Aztec in history, a lot of times they spend time on like, I don't know, like either focusing on like the savage brutality of human sacrifice and so on and so forth, or they also like to kind of highlight a lot of the mysticism, the gods, and mythology of it. And I remember a friend of mine at the time, we were learning about Quetzalcoatl, this feathered serpent god, and looking at that, and he asked and said, like, I wonder if like Mexicans ever found like a dinosaur head and just thought that was what it was. And then it made me think like, yeah, because they would do that because only like, white male like gods are what work, I guess. And so like that was sort of the initial kind of thought, and it had been this little seedling of an idea. And then that synchronicity started happening where it was just this idea of like Mexican Dinosaur. And I wanted to go for like a punk. I know it's always weird when people would say that, like, I wanted a punk feel in a book of poetry. But as I was like researching, I found this old Ramones record, and it had like a bunch of dinosaurs on it. So again, I was like, oh yeah, synchronicity of like dinosaurs. And then everything you were talking about with like unearthing and like scattered bones and like how we unearth histories, and oftentimes in multiple places. It's never just usually like one site where we find everything. It's like scattered throughout. And then additionally, and this kind of ties into like something that's been happening recently in San Antonio. Like a lot of especially for Mexican American poetics, you're often overshadowed, I'd say, by Chicano poetics as sort of the main thrust of like, this is what Mexican American poetics is about. And especially with Chicano poetics, there's that hard stop at Aslan and the mythology and princes and royalty and the blood and cosmology of it. And that's awesome. And I just was like, I want to go further than that. I want to go to when the dinosaurs were around and like this was still land that people would eventually occupy, and there were no borders then, and it was a lot of other things. And then that just kind of made it more fun for me, and just really loved the title. And I was like, no, like I have to have that title. Like it just works. And it's also one of those titles that people can just project thoughts towards. And like, I love those titles more than anything.
Yeah. Which makes sense, because now that it all ties together with a deity, and like on your cover, you have that image. And for those who are deep cuts like Ramones, like, I don't know how you're going to get like the copyright issuing.
Hey, look, you are diming me out right now. Jimmy, edit point, mark it. Oh, no, wow, you the feds right now.
There are some similarities, but you know what? I rock with that. That's very puro. That's very San Antonio. Like, we fucking like, do what we do. And if we even get in trouble, fuck it, because it looks cool. And that's punk rock.
Yeah, and there's that definition at the beginning of like rascuache, and one of San Antonio pop art that has been around for a long time is what we kind of refer to as rascuache art, where you take something from pop culture, whether it's like Marilyn Monroe or a soda can, and it's similar the same way Andy Warhol did, and you just San Antonio that shit. You like add your little twist to it and run with it, and so yeah, like that's how I felt.
Yeah, and you saying that right now just makes perfect sense with like the original marketing for this and the stuff that you were generating. It is like taking it, repurposing it, and making it your own. So I want to dive more into the book in a bit, but can you maybe share another poem?
No, yeah,
we'll get into it.
So this really ties into what we were talking about with magical realism and pop culture and how we take it and work with it. So this poem is called Wild Shit Happens All the Time in the Hood, and sometimes it's real and sometimes it's not. Rainy November sits on the city's skin like the cold ocean. I am shambling on its shoulders towards the corner store. Across the way, I spot Rodney, the local vato for my barrio who swears on crystals, astrology, PTSD, and Bud Light. And he is soaked in the same wet as I am. Rodney, aflame with something on his mind, runs up on me, jaywalking, crossing 4 lanes and dodging 6 cars going 30. He says, "Roos, you're not going to believe it." I said, "What, fool?" He says, "I saw cool guy." I said, "Who?" He says, cool guy. I was out by Woodlawn Lake and 3 dudes were trying to jump me when splash, the ducks and the geese trip out. The ravens and the grackles flew off. The tadpoles and the turtles started acting crazy and out of the pinche lago ese vato cool guy way. He had on some fresh Adidas chanclas con alas and everything. Chum, chum, chum. He was flying and jumping, color bronce, and scared away the 3 vatos trying to beat my ass. He flew down all like, and was like, "What's up, fool?" And I said, "I ain't got no beef, homie, but yo, those flying chocolates you got are super fly." Homie looked like young Edward James almost mixed with Carlos Santana. He had all this gold jewelry like Mexican Mr. T and stuff. Like, dude was not scared of getting robbed by nobody. And I was all like, "So you from around here or what, fool?" And he was like, "Nah, I'm from the ocean." And I said, "Oh shit, Corpus?" And he was like, "Nah, I run all that water." He said, "My enemies call me Namor, but my people call me cool guy." And I'm wondering who's messing with someone named cool guy with wings on his feet, but whatever. Everybody's got haters, I guess. And then a turtle came up to the homie and started whispering to him. And I couldn't understand the turtle, but I could tell it was something serious. I asked cool guy, "What's up? And did he need backup or what?" And he was like, "How long can you hold your breath?" And I said, "The regular amount, but I'm down to try." And he said, "Nah, some other time." And then dove off and cool guy was gone. And I said, "Rodney, what have you been smoking? And he swore on his unemployment check that it happened. And we both stood in the rain, but only one of us saw a miracle through all the water.
So this collection of yours, Mexican Dinosaur, it has a lot in there. You know, it has a lot of San Antonio. Everything you write is honestly very, very San Antonio. It has grief in there. It has hope. It has these moments of locality. What was talk to us about the collection? Like, what was the process of like putting it together, and how do you see it living in the world?
How do I see what?
How do you see it living in the world? You know, like you hope.
Yeah. So maybe this is like lofty, but like I think of like other like poets throughout like canonical American poetry, and how casually a lot of their poetry was rooted in place, whether that was completely intentional or not. So you have like the beat poets kind of always talking about where they were, whether it was New York or San Francisco. You know, even someone like Charles Bukowski wrote a lot about LA. A lot of New York poets write about New York, or Chicago poets like Jose Olvidades writes a lot about Chicago. And I think similarly, I just wanted to do that. Like, I feel like San Antonio is a place that really doesn't get its props as a wonderful city. But it's always a place that I find that when people come to visit or stay for an extended period of time, they usually tend to like fall in love with it. And they're like, man, it's just different here. It's just a different way of life. And you can really just appreciate a moment and have fun and be outside. And there's kind of less pressure to like always be on. But it's still very magical. And there's a lot of places here that you can tap into and find your tribe, find your community, find people who you fall in love with, find almost like found families even. With this particular collection, I was actually putting together a chapbook, and I started that process, and I was looking at it and I was like, okay, cool. It had like a different vibe. All the poems that were in that chapbook are in this book. And then it just kind of kept building and building. And I found other poems that hadn't found homes yet and fit perfectly with this kind of vibe of what I was talking about. And in the process of putting it together, I think I also found more inspiration. So then I just started writing stuff. And so like the piece I just read came out of that, and being around and sharing some of these poems inspired more poems. It begot baby poems. It begot other little poems. And it just kept building. And eventually I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is, and saw what needed to be clipped, and just really wanted it to be a concentrated effort of like place, but unlike like my previous book, A Saint for Lost Things, I wanted it to be larger than that. So,
yeah. And I think like when you talk about your tribe, I think the great thing that I always really loved is that's so authentic. Again, we always say puro because you are puro San Antonio, but I love that you so incorporate hood rat shit into your work, but you make it so beautiful. Like, you're talking legit hood rat shit and you're like, let me just show you how much I love it, right? And I guess, why do you need to feel the need to bring in that hood rat shit and rascuache and just like that unblemished, unrefined, like puroness that is you?
I would say, kind of tying back to my last kind of answer, I think one of the reasons why I think people don't like San Antonio is because, unlike other cities that got established sort of like post-colonialism, post-genocide, native indigenous removals, San Antonio still has all that here. It just was stomped on and kicked around and, literally peed on by Ozzy Osbourne at one point, you know.
He's there.
You know, and I love Ozzy, and you know that was great. But the thing is that unlike a lot of, like, I look at San Antonio almost like other cities like Philadelphia or even New Orleans that have these sort of like historical roots that are just so deep. However, here it's just a lot hotter, a lot more dustier, and we can't necessarily strip ourselves of that. And sometimes when things are too new, I feel like it's a very San Antonio thing to feel like you don't deserve it, or it's not for us, or it's, you know, it's like, or it comes at a cost, and we're leery about these things. So like, I think it's not just me romanticizing like the hood rat shit or like that Squatchy shit, but it's also like there we come back to that word puro, like there's a purity to it. There's this when you can just earnestly trust something, no matter how like degraded or overused it's been, no matter how broken it is, whether it be an actual item that you turn into art or a person that you found, or you know, a community that found you, like you come to still have the opportunity to be planted and thrive. You know, whereas like in like a city like New York, where it's like, you know, there's that hustle and bustle and that pressure that like, if you can't make it here, you know, you can't do it, or you have to rise to the moment. And while that's awesome and like good for them, like what about just a place where you can just thrive as your best self, or your earnest and true self? And so I think that's why I do that, because when it's like I like doing hood rat shit. I've done hood rat shit with both of y'all. Like, you know, like
I don't know what you're talking
about. So it's like allegedly sprinkle that. But so I think it's never like I don't know, like it's not something like to try to like run away from or keep outside of your art. It's like that's who you are, or who I am, and I'm like, yeah, like I love those times too, and put it in the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to ask a little bit, you know, like it's a strange thing to interview you because both of us know you so well, right? So that's stuff that's like, right. Well, I don't need to ask. I already know. But I would love to hear you talk a little bit about, because you came up in the slam world, right? And that was your kind of like introduction to poetry and this form of like writing and expressing yourself in storytelling. And then you chose to go to Our Lady of the Lake University, here in San Antonio, on the west side. Again, very on brand. They have a very interesting and specific degree path, in that it's an MA and an MFA in creative writing and social justice. So can you talk about that kind of like journey from slam to MFA, and why that MFA program specifically, and how that kind of has shaped your work?
Yeah. So
I'm bringing up the hard times. When we start from the bottom.
The struggle, yeah, it was the bottom. Yeah. Well, I like right before getting my MFA, I was kind of on what I thought was a trajectory to be a full-time working artist. I like really slimmed down my life in terms of like property I owned, and just was really trying to travel and tour and hit all the networks that slam poetry has. And along that journey, and especially when I try to get into publishing and submitting work for publication or conferences, I started to realize and notice how many like MFA degree, like individuals with MFAs were present or being recognized. And that got me curious, like what that even was. So I started learning more about it. And then just coincidentally enough, my mom, who was an elementary school teacher at the time, was having career day. And a professor from Our Lady of the Lake, Dr. Sanborn, who is amazing, happened to be there with his daughter and was talking about his English program and the MA MFA program. And my mom was like, oh, my son's a poet and a writer, and he's gone and done this and blah, 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 and just beaming. And he was thinking about it. So he was like, yeah, tell him to come to our program. And I went, and they were really interested in all the work I had already done, which was something that I found very captivating for me, because I had asked around and I had talked to other programs, but what I noticed was a lot of academic spaces, especially back then, I want to say like this was like 2017, 16, 17-ish. They didn't really credit spoken word work. They didn't credit like I've made my own chapbooks, I've sold art, I've toured, I've presented in large capacity rooms and for distinguished guests, and have seen what poetry can do and gotten some notoriety from it. And I felt like at Our Lady of the Lake, they got it. They were like, wow, like your work, you've traveled how many places, you've performed at what kind of conferences, and they were just so eager to learn from me as much as teach. So that was just fantastic. Then on top of that, a lot of other MFA programs stick to more canonical work, so i.e. Dusty and mostly dead white men. And so at Our Lady of the Lake, theirs has a social justice slant. So everything we learned was like taught through that lens. I remember we talked about, disabled writers. We had there was a course on that and disabled poetics. And these are things I've never even heard of. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is awesome. And just really kind of expanding out from just canonical works, critical, pedagogy of bell hooks and how that ties into poetics. And it really just got me open in a different way than I saw other individuals who struggled at theirs, because they just felt like they were kind of always being browbeaten to fit a certain mold or a certain type of poetry that's more academic, more highfalutin, more just overextension of image and metaphor and also very unaccessible to the average person. Like I think the majority of people hate poetry, and I don't think we have to look at it like that.
Yeah,
like it can be fun.
It can definitely be fun. And I want to, before I ask you the very last question, because we need to wrap this up. I don't want to wrap it up, but we have to. I know that your family means so much to you, and your family and your friends are obviously so prominent in your writing and in this new collection of yours. While you were sharing this, can you, if you want to, if it's not too vulnerable, can you please share with us like the best compliment that you got from your family or friends about your writing?
Oh, wow. I'll say this. I mean, there's times like I'll say a lot of the best compliments I've gotten on it is from Chibi, like who was sort of executive editor on the book, and saw like once the pages were there once, and shout out to Ayakunle Falomo, who was also an editor on the book, and Amir Safi, who's helping with the project. Shout out to a lot of the people who I sent it off to look at, like Natasha Hernandez and Victoria Valenzuela and Lupe Mendez, the former state poet laureate of Texas. I as their responses started coming in, and even like right before that, when the concept of the book really took shape, Chibi was kind of really there, like, no, this has something, and this can do some really amazing things, and fingers crossed that happens, knock on wood. But that was very important to me, and probably some of the best compliments. I feel like we're kind of just sitting on like a secret book that like I'm very eager, going back to like where my heart is, to share. And once we do that, then it can be like, boom, let's talk about it. This is awesome. And then as far as my family, like most of them, like they're always proud of me. They see like what I post on social media and congratulate me. But with them and my art, we don't really kind of I kind of prefer them separate.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited for the book. As we're recording it, it's set to launch in October. By the time this podcast airs, it's out in the world. So if you want to go get it, which you should, we'll talk about where you can find that in a moment. But to wrap things up, our final question of the interview is, as you look towards the future, right, in the next chapter of your life, if that chapter was a poem, what would the title be?
Ooh, the next chapter of my life as a poem title, it would be Fuck With Me, I'm a Badass, who loves his friends, but will fight if you disrespect and perpetrate, but with love and grace. The movie.
Love it.
I love a long title. You know this.
I was gonna say, it was like, it's so you're just like, don't know how to keep it concise, but I love it. I want to know all the words.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending this time with us, sharing a little bit about yourself, your work. If people want to find you and your work, where can they do that?
They can find me on Instagram at roostmtz, ROOSTMTZ. I also have a website, clmtz.com, where a lot of my other information is at. And you can pre-order your book now through wanpoetry.com.
WAN.
So thank you all so much. Yeah, no, WAN Poetry, yes. Thank you all so much for having me. This is a blast.
No, Thank you. Always so great to talk to you and to see you. For those who don't know, like I talk to Rooster quite a bit. I just don't see his face.
Yeah. And so I was just like, hey, Fran, what's going on? And it's like, oh my God, things are crazy. Like, yeah. And then I see Tibby all the time.
I never see Rooster. We don't podcast. All right. Thanks, Rooster.
No problem.
You know, I really always love when we interview friends, just because it's just a different type of intimacy and play, and we get to joke with each other. And because we already know them, I think there's so much pride, enthusiasm that we want to share, like those intimate relations and connections that we have with our friends through their words, because we have brilliant friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm walking away from this like just feeling really scrappy. I think that's, I don't think that was a word that was said, but that idea of rascuache and the feeling of San Antonio is very scrappy. Like we take what we have and we make it into something beautiful, right? And we do that with our lives too. We take what we're given and find the beauty and joy in it. So I'm excited to go find beauty and joy in this world. So let's thank some people and get out of here.
Yes. So let's go and thank the listeners, y'all. Really, here at Words and Shit, we make this podcast specifically for poetry lovers like you out there. And we thank you so much for supporting us and these beautifully spoken words throughout our podcast.
Yes, and thank you so much to the queer artists that produced our theme music, Chris Condé. Definitely go look them up.
And thank you to Write Art Out and the City of San Antonio of Arts and Culture, whose support has helped produce this podcast, because we fancy like that.
And if you're just tuning in and you don't already, please go follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. Refuse to call it X. We are at Words and Shh. You can definitely slide into our DMs. Let us know what poets you think we should have on the show.
Yes. And if you want to go and listen to a plethora of our podcast and past episodes, please go find our past episodes on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts at.
Don't forget when you're doing that to like, subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps us get the word out about the show, so that more people can find out about all these incredible poets.
Yeah, and if you did not know, this is a Gem in Eyes Productions podcast.
Until next time, people, stay safe out there.
Adios.